Hi, my name is Alyssa Bermudez, and I'm the creator of Big Apple Diaries. Big Apple Diaries is about my life as a young girl growing up in New York City around the time of the terrorist attacks in 2001. It shows the trials and tribulations of being a middle school student before, during, and after a life-changing, significant event. I'd love to share a little bit about my process with you, how I turned my very real diaries into a book, this graphic novel. I was always interested in art. I wanted to work in fashion someday, and I filled the margins of all my notebooks and diaries with drawings of shoes because I wanted to be a shoe designer. I was worried about boys, fitting in, getting good grades, getting into a good high school. My family life felt a bit complicated at times too, because each parent lived in a different location, so I had 2 apartments to keep track of. All of these things felt big because they impacted my day-to-day life. I wrote about these things in my diary, and that was a way for me to process all of it. I was definitely impacted by the diary of Anne Frank, and I thought that no adult could ever understand what really went on in the mind of a young teen. The terrorist attacks in the city changed my life, the lives of everyone around me, but also the general energy in New York City. That changed too, and I wanted to show all of those things in Big Apple Diaries. All of the middle school trials and tribulations, crushes and drama, everything felt smaller, and everything that mattered before mattered a little bit less after that. At times it felt like we were in chaos and unsure. We were scared, and not knowing what was going to happen next was overwhelming. But there were so many moments of joy and hope and laughter in between as well. So I wanted to show those elements of going back to normal life. So how did I mine through my diaries to put this book together? It was challenging at first. I initially didn't have a thread connecting all of the diary entries together. I just started pulling some of the ones that were my favorite or the funniest ones out. And over time, I realized what the connecting threads were. I eventually gave myself permission to move things around and change things up a little bit. That unblocked the writing process for me, and it allowed me to add things in that I might not have written about, but they actually did happen. I didn't write about September 11th in my diary at the time, but I eventually wrote about it 10 years later because I didn't want to forget how it felt that day and what actually happened in my own small experience with it. I think reflecting on it at that time allowed me to look back on it with a bit more depth and empathy. One of the other important parts of developing this book was my physical location in the world. I lived in New York City my whole life and never moved anywhere except for maybe a few months here and there. So when I moved across the world to Australia, my views on New York City changed as well. No one ever asked me about September 11th while I was living in New York City because we were all connected to it in some way, and it wasn't really a conversation starter. But when I moved across the world, no one had a personal connection to it really, so everyone asked me about it, and it was a bit jarring to be asked about it so many times. So I think that's one of the reasons why I made sure to include that side of this in Big Apple Diaries. It made me realize how important it was to share that experience, especially with people that weren't there and weren't alive yet. And my hope is to show how it felt at that time, being a young teen, going through a significant change in the world. My diaries are honest, they're raw, they're embarrassing. There's a lot of mishaps along the way growing up, and I wanted to make sure I included all of those things because they're real and authentic, and they were directly from my heart at that time. For me, Big Apple Diaries has been a healing experience in some ways, reflecting on a part of my life that is so long ago. And now that I'm a grown-up, I can empathize with the grown-ups around my life at that time too, what it was like for my teachers, my parents, and everyone else in the city. I hope that readers can relate to the heartfelt moments in this book, experiencing big changes and navigating where to go next. I hope they can feel that it's normal to not always feel normal. I encourage readers to reflect on the world around them. Start writing in a diary, or continue writing in a diary about the world today. If you like drawing, add drawings to it as well. We're living together in this new world and experiencing another big change. So maybe one day you can look back on what you've written and remind yourself of a time that you overcame a big challenge. I hope you enjoy Big Apple Diaries.